This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, remind me to turn that off when we finish because I'll completely forget about it. I feel like I'm in a skit. Aha, okay, cool. All right, perfect. All right, challenges of waiting. So we're doing a series on waiting. Brother Ronald did a last Bible class on waiting, and we're looking at waiting in Egypt. But what I thought would be useful is maybe to have a quick chat about what are challenges of waiting. So, hello. No, I'm just going to do it this way. Just I'm doing my thing, right? Mess me up, it'll just fall apart. Okay, challenges of waiting. So, who likes waiting for stuff? Oh, it depends, right? Generally, you like waiting for good things, yeah? Or you'd like to wait for bad things. Like, I'm happy to wait for bad things as long as they want to take. If they don't turn up, that's fine. That bad train turns up with the pile of garbage it's going to dump on my back. I'm happy to wait as long as that train wants to take. Yeah, just if it never arrives, it's great. Yeah. Who likes waiting for good things? Like waiting for good things? Yeah. Christmas is coming around, birthdays, drowned in presents. Most people don't like waiting. Oh, anticipated waiting. Okay, right. That's not a bad. That's a very insightful thing. Right. So if the train is 10 minutes late, that is bad waiting. Good waiting is when it turns up early, right? Unless you miss it as it goes past.
Yes.
Right.
So if something's later than it should be, then your waiting turns into frustration.
Yeah. Cool. Great. Okay. So what are challenges of waiting? If you're waiting for something, what are the challenges? Think about we're waiting for Christ's return. What are the challenges of waiting for Christ's return? Distractions. Laziness. Yeah. Loss of desire. Yep.
Starting to not believe that it's going to happen.
Yeah, doubt, right? That's the word. What else do you think? Sorry?
Not being sure exactly.
Yeah, not sure, right? Doubt, not sure. You start to question yourself. What else do you think? Anything else? I have my own list. I just want to see whether you're right. That's all. That's asking these questions.
Well, the risk is that you will doubt God.
Yes. Well, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, what does the unfaithful servant do in Matthew 24? Yeah, the Lord is delayed as he's not coming back. So why am I behaving myself? I just go and party with my mates and beat these people up to make them work harder. I mean, I've got time to go and spend time with my friends. All right. Endurance. Can we endure? And that's to bear up under pressure. Right? So when you're waiting's always harder when there's pressure, isn't it? It's like, like it's hard enough just waiting, but somebody comes along and, needles you and say, didn't you say Jesus was going to return? What are you waiting for? Like, why are you waiting? Patience. How do you maintain your patience? Right? Patience is a little bit different to endurance. Patience is being able to just continue calmly, confident that it's going to continue. Keeping the hope alive, right? So we had doubt, loss of desire, right? Distractions. What about convincing the next generation? Right? As we should be. Yeah, totally. Well, I was speaking to an arranging brother from another ecclesia, and he said the greatest problem that they're facing is getting the young people to be engaged in the meeting. It's like, what are we waiting for? There's so many interesting and exciting things I could be doing on a Sunday rather than turning up to Sunday school and going to the meeting. Well, yeah, and it's time. I've got time. You guys had lots of time. I've got time. Accepting limitations. Right? We place limitations on ourselves because we believe that we should follow a certain path, that we should be engaged in a certain lifestyle. And there doesn't seem to be any benefit. Right? Where's the reward? That was the danger that Peter spoke about, wasn't it? He said, Nothing's changed. It's just the same old. Right? And he says, they're fools because little do they know that God has judged the earth before with the flood. Apathy. There's no excitement. So sure, we turn up the meeting, but it's just like flat. It's a thing we do because mum and dad do it. It's a thing we do because our mums and dads did it. It's a thing we do because the generation before our mums and dads did it. Right? It's just a thing we do. It's a habit rather than engagement. Distraction, we had it before. How can we be confident? How can I be confident? So this comes out of Genesis chapter 15, which is really our introduction to this idea of waiting in Egypt. And so in Genesis chapter 15, some important things have just happened, right? So these events occur, we're told, after these things, after the events of chapter 14. In chapter 14, we had Abraham defeating the northern kings to rescue Lot, all right? So he took his 318 trained men, and he had a couple of allies with him, didn't he? And they went up and they went and rescued Lot and the ecclesia. Because it wasn't just Lot, it was the entire ecclesia who had been taken away into captivity. You imagine that. So here are 5 kings, 5 nations. Do you think they might have outnumbered Abraham and his mates? Just a little bit. Yeah. So Abraham's like, if that person had come to me and said, hey, Andrew's been abducted by 5 kings and taken into the north, I'd be like, well, I hope you packed warm because it's kind of cold up there. My first thought wouldn't be, let's go and round up the posse and get our stirrups on and charge out there and go and rescue Andrew. And if I came to you guys and said, hey, we've got to meet Andrew, what would you say? Oh, gee, I'm thinking the 25th of Never is a good time. Yeah, I've got lots of stuff between now and then to do, right? But he doesn't. He gets his 318 men and a few friends, and he charges up there and he rescues him, right? And he comes back, and we know the story. King Sodom says, that's amazing, you're awesome, you're fantastic. It's great that you brought your commando team and your Green Berets and your Delta Force and your Navy SEALs to come and rescue us out of the hands of the bad guys. You take whatever spoil you want. And Abraham's, I won't take a shoe latchet off you. Right? My friends can have whatever they want. All I wanted to do was rescue my family. That was what I wanted to do. And so when we come to chapter 15, Abraham is worried about something. Because God says to him in verse 1, in a vision, don't be scared, Abraham. What do you think Abraham was worried about? Yeah, did he make the right decision in terms of declining the king of Sodom? Yep. You've just gone and punched the largest army in the face and grabbed your friends and some spoil and scarpered. What would you be worried about? Reprisal, right? Because it's not like Abraham's got a big town with walls and a standing army with cavalry and chariots and things. Like, he is a nomad. He just has tents and a whole bunch of sheep. Protect him from the outside world. And look, sheep can be terrifying, but as a general rule, they're not that great in fight. And so Abraham's concerned. He's like, this could go badly. And by the way, I don't have an heir. And so he appoints Eliezer of Damascus. Now, why do you think he appoints Eliezer of Damascus? Yeah. If he dies, which is potential, right? I know what we should do. We should go and attack America and get our brothers and sisters out, right? What could possibly go wrong? Everything could go wrong. And so he appoints Eliezer. And so Abraham says to God, look, I'm scared and I don't have an heir, and I'm thinking this guy is the guy. And God says to him, don't be scared, and this is not the guy. You are going to have children of your own. And he shows him the stars of heaven, and he says, if you can number them, you'll be able to number the children that you're going to receive. But then he goes on and he says to Abraham, he says to him, I'm going to give you a prophecy about your family. I'm going to tell you about what's going to happen to your family so you can be confident in what I'm going to do. And that's the challenge we have, isn't it? Are we confident? Right? Because we're waiting. And part of the problem with waiting is confidence that what we're waiting for is going to happen. And Abraham's waiting, isn't he? He's like, I'm waiting for the sun to turn up. And by the way, God's waiting for Abraham to become a dead tree. Right? So God's waiting, Abraham's waiting, Sarah's waiting, everybody's waiting. But Abraham has got a confidence problem. So God says, I'm going to give you a prophecy about your family. Now, this is the first time God gives a prophecy to allay the confidence or to encourage a person. The first prophecy is given to the serpent, which is a declaration of war, Genesis 3:15. The second prophecy is given to Noah. I'm going to destroy the earth. Right? That's not particularly confidence building. Right? So this is the first time that God gives a prophecy about confidence, to generate confidence in a person. Now, we have lots of prophecies, don't we, about the future. Right? And many of those prophecies have come to pass. Prophecies about Egypt, prophecies about Tyre, prophecies about the Roman beast system in Revelation, prophecies of Israel returning to land. So are we confident? Can we look at those prophecies and go, yes, God's plan is coming to pass? Taken longer than I'd like, but it's coming to pass. And so God gives him this prophecy. We also have a covenant in the blood of Christ. Jesus says, this is my body broken for you. And what does God say to Abraham to do? Go and round up some animals and break them in half, and we'll pass between them. That's how confident I am that my covenant will come to pass. Because if either of us breach this covenant, what had happened to these animals will happen to the person who breaks the covenant. That was why he did that. Okay. And so he gives him this prophecy. The Lord said to him, know for a certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and they will be enslaved and mistreated there, but I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterwards they will come out with great possessions. Now, if that was your family, how excited would you be with that? Sounds awesome, right? You're going to go into a country, you don't belong there, right? You're going to suffer horrifically. It's going to be terrible. But wait, you're going to come out with lots of possessions. Right. Anybody want to sign up? Sign up? Sign up? Anybody want to sign up? Anybody want to? No takers. The last bit's like, yeah, that's kind of good. Could we skip the middle bit? Could we do, less of the pain, suffering, slavery? Yeah, the last bit would be great. Now, we know that they took this seriously because Joseph says to his brothers in Israel, he says, look, when you leave, so Joseph was confident, when you leave, right, you must take my bones with you. I'm not staying here. Right? And he made that request knowing that he'd be long dead before that occurred. Right? And so this was going to be a multi-generational time frame. Now, I want you to imagine that you're generation 2. Things pretty good. Making some money, selling some sheep, bought some houses, got a farm, feeling pretty good about life, yeah? Things are getting better. Generation 3, inheriting the farm, expanded the business, more sheep, gone into camels. It's looking great. Wow, generation 3, absolutely going great guns. And look, multiplying. Right? At this point, you'd be going, this is not too bad, actually. Egypt has been good to us. Egypt's fantastic. We like Egypt.
They've done well there.
Know anybody else like that? Yeah. We've done pretty well here, haven't we? Pretty comfortable? I'll tell you what, living in Auckland in 2022, make sure I get it right, is a lot better than living in sub-Saharan Africa in 2022. Right? By the way, living in sub-Saharan Africa in 2022 is a lot better than living in sub-Saharan Africa in 1983. Right? So all the boats have lifted. It's just our boats have done really well. Now, if the story ended there, Israel would never have gone to the land of Israel, would they? They'd be happily Egyptian. Is there a modern day corollary to that? Modern day, maybe in the last 100 years, is there a modern day relationship that we've seen in the past? where God's people were in the wrong place and they needed to be dug out. Where do you think that might have been? Yep, Europe. 1936. Jews were doing pretty good, very happy, very powerful, very rich. Right? God says, yep, you're in the wrong place and I need to encourage you to leave. Generation 4 is going to be pretty miserable, isn't it? All the money's gone. And I want you to imagine that you're there, right? So who here owns a property or is buying a property? Right? So you get home on Friday afternoon, there's a letter from the government that says, by the way, we've discovered that you belong to a fringe group of people and that you're actually terrorists, that you don't support government policy, and we have taken your property off you. By the way, you need to be at Britomart at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning with your family. Only bring what you can carry. We're moving you. And then you get on the train at Britomart and they trip you off to Southland. The worst possible place I can imagine would be in Invercargill. We're going to Stewart Island, right? Hopefully there's nobody from Stewart Island or Invercargill on the line. Okay, so now we're in Stewart Island. It's cold, it's wet, the rain comes sideways, right? And we're in huts. We're put into huts. No insulation, only what you could carry. And it gets worse because there's not enough huts, so everybody's crammed in. By the way, your bank account's been frozen. Thank you for your donation to the government. And you've been thrown out of your jobs, and your pensions are gone. Having fun yet? This happened more than once to the Jews. And it could happen to us. Certainly hope it doesn't. But we've seen some crazy stuff happen over the last 2 years. Lockdowns and all that carry on. Right? And so people start dying. Yeah, if the elderly can't go out and do 16 hours of stomping around in the mud or collecting straw, you're superfluous to needs. You're a mouth that has to be fed and tight government budgets. Sorry. You're out of the hut. Probably not so bad in summer. It's going to get pretty nasty in winter. And so slowly you begin to see your friends disappearing and dying. And they are waiting in Egypt. And how long did God say they were going to wait there for? 400 years. How long do they wait? 430. So you'd be like, somebody's forgotten us. And do we sometimes feel that way? Like surely Christ should have been back by now, right? Like 1988 was going to be the year. Like I had lots of Christian just saying 1988, right? Like he's coming back 1988.
Do you think that's we're still holding on to that promise that they were going to be taken out of Egypt by the time they got to the end of it?
That's a really interesting question.
Because by the time Moses came on the scene, they kind of want to get rid of them.
Yeah, well, there's your problem, right? The king of Egypt didn't know Joseph, and Israel didn't know God. That was the problem.
But maybe the wrong ones.
Well, I think Moses' family obviously did, didn't they? And there would have been a few scattered around. There would have been a few faithful, and the midwives, yep. But for the most part, you might argue that God's like, listen, I'm happy for you to be successful. Don't forget who you worship. Don't get distracted by the idols and the flesh pots and the garlic and the leeks of Egypt, right? Sure, succeed, have successful businesses, have nice houses, fine, not a problem. Don't you dare forget who you worship. Right? It's probably Exodus 3 verse 12 for Israel didn't know God, and Exodus 1 verse 8 for the king didn't know Joseph. And so God says it's time to go. And it's hard, we were saying earlier, unanticipated waiting's hard, an extra 30 years. That would have been very difficult. And so Abraham's shown a a torch and an oven. So it came about when the sun had set that it was very dark, and behold, a smoking oven and a flaming torch passed between the pieces. Genesis 15, verse 17. So the torch represents what? The holding forth of the light, isn't it? To stand up and hold a torch. And if you hold a torch for somebody, what does that mean? If you light a candle for somebody, what does it mean? Yeah, right? And you're on their side, right? You're standing up for them, right? You see somebody's in a tough scenario, you go, well, you know, we all need to hold a torch, right? We need to go and support them. And so we've got a couple of good quotes here. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and glorify God, your Father who is in heaven. That you may be blameless and innocent children of God without blemish in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation among whom you shine as lights. Now, what's the problem with shining as a light? What's the problem with showing forth the gospel? You can be seen. Yep, you're conspicuous. You're a target. Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come to the light because they fear that their deeds will be exposed. Each man's work will become evident, for the day will show it, because it is revealed by fire, and the fire itself will test the quality of each man's work. Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal among you, which comes upon you for testing, as though some strange thing happened to you. You see, if you stand forth and hold up the torch of the gospel of God, you're going to attract heat. You're going to end up in an oven. If you stand against wickedness and evil in high places, those people don't like being called out. And so they are going to say, hey, shut up. How dare you criticize us? Now, is there another example where somebody stands up and holds up a torch and ends up in an oven? Yeah, that's right. Daniel's 3 friends. And so Nebuchadnezzar says, hey, this whole Daniel 2 thing about my empire being destroyed, not having that. It's not going to be gold, silver, and whatever the other stuff is, not happening. Right? We're going to have a whole gold statue. In fact, just so you get the message, I'm going to build a whole gold statue. I'm going to stick it out in the middle of a valley so everybody can see it from everywhere. And every time you hear a tinkling cymbal or a drum beat or anything, everybody's got to bow down to my golden idol. Why? Because I'm indoctrinating you. Right? I'm indoctrinating you into the religion of Babylon. You can shake it back like, you know, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for us. And Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego were in reasonably powerful positions, and the people around them are like, well, we can't have these upstarts. And so they go and get taken to the authorities and say, these guys won't bow down. Like everybody else bows down. And you can imagine, right? You're standing out in the group, and everybody's standing around going, oh, yeah, it's a really good day, yeah. Got the sheep moved, we just now. And then, and everybody's like, oh, bow down, right? And you're like, you'd be standing up like a sore thumb. Like everybody's like, get down, you idiot. It's like, I'm not bound down to that. Get down, I'll kill you. I'm not bound down to that. Right? Like, police officers are like, you. And so they get trundled up to Nebuchadnezzar, and Nebuchadnezzar says, what's going on? Why aren't you bound down like everybody else? He's furious. They're like, well, look, we decided before that we were not going to bow down because we believe what God says, and God said nothing about a whole gold statue. Like, you're in opposition to God, clearly. Nebuchadnezzar says, well, that's not good enough. Heat up the kiln, and throw them in. What happens to them? Much to Nebuchadnezzar's disappointment, nothing happens to them. Right? And so they come back out, and Nebuchadnezzar says, wow, that was amazing. Should get you over for Christmas. Right? Great. We'll do the oven thing again. He doesn't say that. Right? He's amazed, and he's like, clearly there's a God in heaven. Clearly there's a God in heaven. What does Moses come across? Burning bush. Right? What's happening to the bush? Nothing's happening to the bush. Right? It's crackling away, merely having a fire, and nothing's happening to it. What does the burning bush represent? What does the bush represent? Represents Israel. and they're about to be in a furnace. Well, they've been in a furnace, haven't they? And God's like, I'm protecting my family. And the flame is raging on that burning bush, and Moses is like, wow, that's amazing. Stands back, and God says, take your shoes off, you're standing on holy ground. And so it represents Israel. Now, Israel probably didn't feel like they weren't being burnt. They probably felt very, very miserable about the situation that was going on in their lives. And yet, just like Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, they went through severe trials. And it's comforting, brothers and sisters, because there's going to be times in our lives when we're going to face severe trials. Severe trials. And we're going to feel like we're being burnt to a cinder. And God's like, you're not going to die. I've got a plan. This is a process. What's the process? Well, James picks this process up. He says, count it all joy, brethren, when you face manifold temptations. So who gets excited when they face trials? Not surprised, no one does. No one's excited about trials. Know that the proving of your faith works patience. The word patience there means endurance, the ability to continue under duress. In other words, not give up. Now, when you're under severe trials, what do you want to do? Yeah, you want to go and curl up in a corner in a ball and suck your thumb and just have somebody put a cuddly rug on top of you and say it's going to be okay. Right? Like, let's make it go away. And let patience have its perfect work, that you might be perfect and entire, lacking nothing. Perfect means complete, but it's better translated mature or fully grown. So it's talking about the development of the individual, right? And so when we encounter trial, what God's doing is he's saying, look, I need you to grow up, and there's things you have to remove. And so we need to burn them off because they don't belong. Entire, no parts missing. In other words, what is needed to be added has been added. Right? And so the development process is you need to mature, you need to build, you need to create, you need to become a full adult, a full man of God. Lacking nothing. What needs to be removed has been removed. Right? And that's what the fire's for. The fire is to augment the things that are missing and burn off the stuff that needs to go. And so we come to Moses, and Moses comes to Pharaoh. Now, this story at one level is quite strange. And I'll tell you why. Imagine you're in Israel and you're suffering under all these trials and tribulations, right? Making these bricks in the heat of the day, trying to feed your family, not enough food to go around, accommodations are terrible. And then this guy turns up and he says, I'm going to rescue you all, right? You're like, well, who is this guy? It's Moses. Who's Moses? Oh, he's somehow related to the royal family. Related to like Pharaoh's daughter or something. Oh, right. So he's one of them. Man, he didn't suffer like we suffered. He's one of those guys. Oh, no, he's been away for a while. Oh, really? Where? He's been in the land of Midian or something. Like, he's a long way away. It's like, so he doesn't actually know what's going on here at all. He's been away for ages. Right. Well, why did he leave? Oh, he murdered somebody. What? Oh, he murdered somebody. He had to run away. And he's going to save us. That's the plan. A former aristocrat who has no idea what's going on in this country, who is hunted by the authorities for murder. That's the guy. Like, could it get worse? Oh yeah, he spoke to Pharaoh actually, and Pharaoh said that we're lazy and we've got to go and get our own straw now. Oh, that's just magical. Fantastic. Great. Like, it's not exactly who you'd want, is it? You would, like, if you were going to choose somebody to come and rescue you, who would you choose? Like, who would you vote in? Like, who's the tallest, smartest, best looking person with the most resources, right? Who's got an army? And yeah, and at least somehow tangentially related to us. That would be great. That would be who you choose, right? And God says, no, I'm going to send Moses. You get Moses. And so Moses turns up and he goes and he speaks to Pharaoh. And as we said, Pharaoh says, look, clearly you guys have got way too much time on your hands to be able to cook up some kind of rebellion to go and worship some god in some desert. So I tell you what, how about we take the straw off you and you make the same number of bricks? And the people are pretty upset about that, aren't they? First question would be, so who appointed you, leader, to go in and talk to Pharaoh? Now, you'll probably find that the fact that he was related to Pharaoh is what got him in. He's like, by the way, Moses has come back from the wilderness. You remember he's related to your sister? Oh, we'd like to have a chat. Oh, good. Just make sure we've got the manacles ready, all right? Because we want to arrest him. And so Moses comes in and has this conversation. And interestingly, Pharaoh doesn't arrest him. But things get even better. Because then these bizarre things start happening in the nation, right? Suddenly there's, one day you go to the well and you pull up a bucket of what you thought would be water and it's blood. And then all the streams are blood. And the Nile is blood. And like, what happened there? Oh, Moses went and had a chat to Pharaoh and turned the whole place to blood. What? How? What? Like, first no straw and now no water. And then Pharaoh's magicians do the same thing. So it's like, well, it's not like Moses is special at all, is he? Because whatever Moses does, these guys do. So how is this helping anybody? And then come the frogs. So you come in, because now you're getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go and get the straw to make the bricks you've got to make, and you're getting home at 9 o'clock, you hop into bed, and the bed's full of frogs. You're like, where'd these guys come from? And then you get the lice. So you sweep all the frogs out and put it in a big pile. The whole place stinks. And then the lice come burrowing up out of the ground. So now you've just got the frogs out of bed, you come into bed and you're itching all night because the lice are attacking you. Is that the deliverance you were expecting? Was that what you were waiting for? You can appreciate why Israel are pretty miserable. Like, things didn't go from terrible to better. They went from terrible to horrendous. But then God makes a difference, doesn't he? He says, of the flies, it won't touch you. And then things begin to turn around. And so we come to them being forced out of Egypt. We've got the Passover, and the angel of death goes through and kills every firstborn child in that nation, except for those who had blood on their lintels. And so there would have been many, many Egyptians who would have been watching the Jews, because I would have gone, hold on, things have, like the first 3 plagues, everybody was wearing it. And maybe Israel needed that. Maybe Israel was like, hold on, don't think that I'm rescuing you because you're special. You're no better than the Egyptians. I'm rescuing you because of the promise I made to your fathers. And Moses makes that point later on, doesn't he? He says to them, don't get on your high horse and say, look how amazing we are. Our God is the God of heaven and earth, the creator of all things. Right? Don't think that, because of all the populations of the world. I didn't choose you because you're the greatest. I didn't choose you because you're the most numerous. I didn't choose you because you're the smartest. I chose you because I loved your fathers. And therefore I love you. That's why I chose you. And so they needed to go through some purging as well. You might think, well, gee, hadn't they gone through some purging already? Probably, yeah, 100%. And so they leave. And you imagine, it's kind of interesting that these people are coming out, yay, it's great, we're going to the promised land, and they're all smiling and happy. You imagine the noise in that city as the people wake up and they go into their little boys, their son's room. Yeah, firstborn, doesn't matter. The place would have been an absolute, you could hear the screaming from every house, the wailing. And Moses walks in to see Pharaoh. What kind of state's Pharaoh in? Yeah, he's just, whole nation brought to its knees. Like these 10 plagues destroy the economy. By the way, that's God's plan with our world. God's plan with our Egypt is to destroy it. So the comfortable houses and the nice bank balances and the flash cars that we drive and the holidays we go on and all that, gone. Don't get too attached. The warning of Lot's wife. She loved Sodom. It was a great place. the dance parties and the sororities and the coffees down at the cafe with the friands, right? Fabulous, amazing, lots of good friends, great chit chats, lots of gossip. You need to leave. Going to blow the place up. I don't want to leave. And that's the challenge for us, isn't it, brothers and sisters? Because we're going to be asked to leave Egypt. We're going to come and knock on the door, and it's going to be time to go. And now, I don't know what it's going to be like in the judgment seat at Sinai. I don't know whether it's going to be 5-star Hilton, right, with the spa and servants and, you know, canapes at 6:15, followed by 3-course dégustant at 6:30. I don't know. I'm guessing probably not. I'm guessing it's probably going to be, here's your tent, right? The water's 600 meters that way, and you can create a fire wherever you like. Really, I wouldn't put it in the tent, but you can put a fire wherever you like. Anybody like camp and rough? We're not told. We don't know. But I'm just thinking, like, perhaps good enough for Israel, right? Israel had to go around and wander through the wilderness and sit outside Horeb for however long, while 40 days at least, while Moses got the law of Moses. That might come as a shock. And so this prophecy was given to Abraham to give him confidence. And we've got prophecies that give us confidence. The last 200 years have been around about one thing. Anybody like to guess what the one thing was? The last 200 years of history. One thing only.
America.
Nope. Huh? Israel. Yep. So for 1260 years, right? The Jezebel system was in control, and the prophets were at war with the Jezebel system. That system ended at the French Revolution. And from the French Revolution until now has all been about Israel in the land, getting Israel back in the land. And so you had America break away from the UK, French Revolution, the Dreyfus Affair. For those who are not sure about what the Dreyfus Affair is about, the Dreyfus Affair was about a court-martial of a Jewish captain who was charged with treason, and it was a setup. And that motivated the first Zionist Congress to state, we need a homeland for our people because we're safe nowhere. And they were right. They weren't safe anywhere. Followed by World War I. What did World War I do? Yeah, right? God sent the entire world to war for one reason. Like, there's plenty of other reasons, but one primary reason. Had to clear the way for Israel, right? Balfour Declaration. That would never have happened if the Turks weren't out of Palestine, because the British got the mandate, didn't they? Right? And the British Empire were big supporters of the Jews. UK, London, the city, is the largest, or was the largest financial system or city in the world. It's an independent country. It has its own separate police force. It's fascinating to read what London is as a place. It's not part of England. It's quite interesting, right? And then so what happens after that? Well, we've got all these Jews in the wrong place, right? Like Egypt, they're in the wrong place. We've got to get them out. So World War II, what's World War II about? Yeah, getting them out of Europe, getting them into Israel, right? And so they trickled in sort of between World War I and World War II, but Israel wasn't a great place to live. Like, it was all swamps and malaria and all sorts of nasty. And so, you know, if you're a well-connected rich banker in Berlin, you're going to go and slum it in Palestine? Of course you're not going to do that. So God says, fine, that nice house you got, it's gone. That nice job you've got, it's gone. That bank account you've got, it's gone. Not enough? Fine. Concentration camp. That's what happened in Egypt. Same thing. Establishment of the United Nations under the auspices of who? The US. The US hegemony. That has been critical for Israel. Absolutely critical. Right? Israel is established. Who protects Israel? The US and the UK, but mostly the US. Right? Globalism, right? It's been great for Israel. It's been good for everybody, really. Like globalism, for all its warts, and capitalism, for all its evils, has dragged the majority of humanity out of poverty. Like undeniable, the stats are available. So what's going to be the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years? If that was all about getting Israel into the land, what does Daniel 11 tell you? What does Ezekiel 14, 12, 13, 14 tell you? Sorry, Ezekiel 12, 13, Zechariah 12, 13, 14. Israel out of the land. The destruction of globalism. Hear a lot of bifurcation in the world, separation and division in the world now. Donald Trump, America first. You guys sort yourselves out. Europe, UK, we're out. It's a basket case. We're not interested. Ukraine war. Right? It's all about control, power, and money. So what does the Russians do? They go and establish BRICS. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and yes. Right? Coronavirus has driven a wedge throughout the world. And worse still, it's created a looming financial crisis. Sovereign debt levels are unsustainable. There will be a financial crisis. It's unavoidable.
And we're before Corona.
We're on our way, yeah. And depending on who you read, you might argue that Corona was designed to allow them to bail out the financial system. And there's some good evidence to suggest that that may have happened. Because they needed something to be able to bail them out. So they couldn't go and bail the banks out anymore, and there's too much debt. No empire has ever survived 130% debt to GDP. The US is 125% to GDP. And then you've got the US wrecking ball. The US dollar was $113 to the euro, the DXY, which is a basket of currencies, mostly European currencies. Why is that important? Well, if the US dollar goes up, everything you pay for goes up. US are fine, they're great. Like they're happy with the expensive US dollar other than their exports because their oil prices don't go up as much as your oil prices go up. And so then you start seeing countries falling over. Sri Lanka, India's got challenges and problems, Pakistan, Africa, and it's all the poor countries that are going to get wiped out first. Argentina is a complete disaster. Look at Turkey, they've got 100% inflation. And if you believe the way we count inflation today, we're running at 7.2. It's probably, if you look at food prices, it's gone up by 35%. Now, fuel prices have gone up, what, doubled in the last year and a half? And so the next period of time is going to be the reverse of what we've had for the last. And so I expect, if Christ doesn't return very soon, we're going to face some challenges. Just as Israel had to go through a few plagues, we may also have to go through those challenges. So it's critically important that what we don't do is get distracted, get lazy, lose our passion for Christ. Right? That we don't get doubtful, because these are signs that Christ is coming, not a sign that we've been forgotten. That's our Egypt. Pretty flash place. But we're going to be called to leave. And we need to be able to leave. We need to be able to walk away and just leave the keys on the front door table and just walk out. Happily. Not worrying about, gee, well, I actually planned to go swimming tomorrow with my friends, or I was actually planning to go and have coffee with Jan, or I would walk away. Just as Israel had to walk away. And I guess here's the question. What would it take for you to walk away happily? Because Israel left. They were thrown out. But anywhere was better than Egypt. What would it take for you to walk away happily? And so we're going to face our fair share of challenges, just like every generation has faced its own fair share of challenges. But we've got a promised land. We've got a promise of hope and joy. Not like that. More like that. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out the evil and wicked schemes. We shouldn't be looking at other people going, gee, I'd love to have what they've got, and they've got all the stuff, and why can't I have that? The Lord is not slow in keeping his promise, as some understand slowness. Instead, he is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. So waiting gives people who are struggling time to get their lives together and for God to work with them. Have you ever thought of that way? Right? You're going through some challenges in your life, and there's bits of your life which are, you know they need to be fixed. Like, you're like, yeah, that's a problem. And I've been struggling with this problem. And I've been struggling with that problem for decades. And the angel's standing there, yeah, that's absolutely the problem. But God's said, we've got some time. So let's take the opportunity and dig into it. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. We have access to our Heavenly Father through prayer. Now, have you ever stopped and thought about, really thought about that? Like, really thought about that? You can stand anywhere on this globe and pray to God, who's in another dimension. He's not up there in the clouds. He's not up there standing on Mars. Like, he is in another dimension. This is interdimensional communication we're talking about. We haven't even discovered how to do that. But all you have to do is think it. Because he's an angel there who's gone, yep, yes, and that's a good one, yep, yep, and that's it, okay, I'll be right back with you. Poof, prayer delivered. We're told that we can enter into the most holy and stand in the throne room of the living God through faith. Like, you imagine if that was literally true. Like, it's like, I really need to talk to the Heavenly Father. And the angel's like, oh, no problem. Opens the door, interdimensional transportation portal. Poof, wah, you're in the throne room. The tiles are like the sky, golden pillars to the clouds, the living creatures, the cherubim standing around. That's who you're meant to be. And here's the king on the throne. And you're walking along with your angel, and the king comes down and he says, what is it, my son? What is it you need? What is it, my daughter? What do you need? What can I do to help? You imagine that. Because that's what happens, as far as God's concerned. Jesus says, be very careful what you do with the little ones, with the children, because their angels stand in front of the face of God. So your angel is talking to God on your behalf. It's astounding. And it's easy to forget because we're stuck here, right? Doing the real stuff, like paying bills and taxes and rates, getting people to where they got to go. God looks at it very differently, completely differently. And we need to take time to step back and go, let's just think for a bit about what our relationship is, what's actually real, because that ain't real. You are not going to sit down in one of the palace alcoves in 935 years for a cup of tea and think, oh, I really like that restaurant down on Queen Street. But you're not. We're not. None of this is going to matter. For this very reason, I was shown mercy, so that in me, the worst of sinners, says Paul, Christ Jesus might display an immense patience as an example for those who would believe in him and receive eternal life. You see, we're not just the only ones waiting, are we? It's not just us being patient. Jesus is being patient too. You know, there's this beautiful comment that Jesus makes. He says, anyone that the Father sent to me, I will not turn away. If the Father sends you, I'm here for you. He doesn't say all the ones I choose. So you can imagine he's walking through, right? He's got to get 12 apostles, 12 disciples. No. No. Oh, hi. Yes. 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 Yeah. No, that's not what happens, is it? Like, Jesus didn't get to choose, did he? It was like, yes, and 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 yes. In fact, you can all come. Because my Father told me that you need to come along, so you're coming along. You imagine Thomas, doubtful Thomas, like the brother. There's always that brother who just takes a little bit longer to get across the line, right? Me, for example, the slow one, like, oh, Justin's coming again. Okay. Right, how you going? Yeah, great. Right? Jesus doesn't go, well, sorry, Thomas, like, there's only so much I can do. No, he doesn't. He says, look, you have a date with my resurrection. We all have a date with Christ's resurrection. And so we're waiting in Egypt, just like Israel was waiting in Egypt. Are there going to be challenges and trials? I can guarantee it. Like the financial world is a disaster, and we've got a war going on in Europe, and that could easily escalate. Globalism is being destroyed as we speak. Israel is leaving the land because God says he's taking them out of the land for their own good, by the way. And so let's stand together and not lose heart, not be distracted. And every night pray that our Lord Jesus Christ returns. Stop recording.